Good morning, folks, and welcome to another Southern Vermont New Vermonter Provider Networks meeting. My name is Alex Beck. I run these monthly meetings as a part of our Working Communities initiative here in Southern Vermont. And it's an opportunity for providers of all different kinds of services and resources to collaborate and find ways to better support our new Vermonters in our region. Sorry, just making sure our speakers have the link for later. Today's focus is going to be on adult language learning. And I'm being specific here because it is very different in our state in terms of how someone accesses language learning based on their age and what institutions they're enrolled in. But before we dive in, I'm wondering if Tracy, if there's anything at the statewide level, Tracy Dolan from our State Refugee Coordinator's Office, what's going on at the statewide level?
Hi, thank you so much. I don't think I have a lot of new announcements, just probably more continued updates. The Welcome Corps, which is the program that the feds launched for private sponsorship. I attended a more in-depth meeting about that for all of the state refugee directors across the country, and they are starting to work it out a little more. Again, they're not getting a lot of interest in phase one, which is where folks come together, raise funds, and put in an application, and they're matched with someone who is not named in advance, but they're getting a ton of interest for phase two. And they expect the phase two to start probably in November. And that's where folks will come together, raise funds, do the same steps, but we'll name someone. And then that named person would be available to match and then be supported. We are seeing that most of the interest nationwide is really from folks who are here, who came in as refugees or immigrants through another channel, and they're looking for family reunification. And so this will be an opportunity for family reunification. However, I do think there might be a few groups interested in phase one right now, which is the opportunity for people to sponsor someone that they don't know. And so if anyone is interested in doing that, they should go to the Welcome Corps website. It walks you through every step to do it. It's fairly involved. And one of the steps is making a welcome plan. So it's really the detailed information about how you will go about ensuring that they get all the services they need in that first 90 days. And if you, after you go through all that and look at all the resources, if you have questions, you can certainly reach out to me and I'd be glad to help out. In other news, in the refugee office, we are getting some additional funding this year. Additional funding that was unexpected is coming in specifically for Afghan arrivals. And so we'll be doing some brainstorming to think about, are there any unique programs we're able to stand up specifically for Afghan arrivals? It's always challenging because that isn't entirely equitable, but we also don't want to then just say no to funds that are available. So if we have an opportunity to help out a group, we'll do it. And the other additional funding that's coming in through the state is meant to broadly support employment and self-sufficiency, but is also available for asylum work. So I'm working with some of the asylum seeking organizations now about how best to invest some of that. And so we will likely invest in the legal piece as there is a real need there. And we may invest in some kind of statewide navigator, maybe at a part-time level, but possibly placed with an agency. And then additionally, we may invest in some of the asylum assistance networks themselves who might be in a place where they might be able to either take funds or possibly hire somebody part-time. So those are some of the things we're looking at. And we did complete our community consultations. So community consultations are required for refugees to be able to come to our state next year, and they're required in order for resettlement agencies to propose a number. So consultations were done in Brattleboro and Bennington and Rutland and Chittenden. For the most part, most of the agencies are not requesting an increase. If anything, they're requesting somewhat of a decrease from last year, and housing being the biggest obstacle. So obviously monitoring the housing piece. There is some funding available to assist with housing when people first arrive. However, generally, funding has not been the problem as much as availability and then long-term affordability. And that's, I think, all I have for right now, but I'll pause and see if anyone has any questions.
Any questions?
I'm going to add
Great.
one more thing,
Oh,
Alec, given
yeah,
your
go ahead.
topic, which is ELL. So how does our funding interplay with ELL? So for refugee resettlement work, the funding that comes in from refugee support service money is really meant to be the payer of last resort. So in an ideal world, other than that first few months, ideally, refugees are meant to hook into state systems. They already exist, but they're not sufficient. And so that's why we get refugee support service money. The priorities for that money are generally employment and employment related services, and ELL for adults is part of employment related supports and services. So my office does fund English language learning because of the amount available. The intensity of the service is mostly focused on people who are newly arriving or in that first year. Probably the funding will not be able to continue at the rate where in year 4, somebody would be able to do as much English language learning as they're doing in the first year. So our money is meant to enhance what's available. Realistically, though, our adult learning system in Vermont right now does not appear to have the capacity. And so we got to just keep working on that and talking to AOE about what that looks like. But I just wanted to explain there, we are one investor in ELL. In Chittenden, that looks like USCRI doing most of that in-house, but some of it happens also outside. And in the Brattleboro-Bennington area, our investments primarily go into world learning and to the tutorial center. And so doing both the state and the private investment there. Okay, thanks.
Great. No, that was a great overview and introduction to the topic, because in many ways, that's kind of how we'll look at the resources available here in Southern Vermont. There are general literacy is a responsibility of our Title II organizations, and that's Vermont Adult Learning and the Tutorial Center. And so those are funded through the Agency of Education. And those are really those systems that there's one of those similar providers servicing every part of the state. And so then there is programming that's really specific to perhaps new Vermonters or refugees. And I think that is where we see some of these really targeted investments from Tracy's office. And so as an individual enters the education system and based on their educational goals, they may be interacting with one of these providers or all of these providers based on how they deliver services. And then also, you know, if you are someone who believes we need more ELL generally, then there's ways that we, you know, to look at that and to advocate and to be a part of those solutions, I think are also important. One example, for instance, is, you know, the formula the state uses to identify how much money our literacy offices get, right? Those formulas don't always take into account a community that goes from 0 refugees to 100 refugees in over a year necessarily. And so that's where Tracy's office filled some really important gaps. As we move forward, we'll really be looking at different ways and different partnerships and different organizations, or the same organizations probably, but different ways of funding this. So that's a big picture. And I would love to start with Vermont Adult Learning. And I see Jackie, you're here. And if you could provide an overview of who you are and what you do at Vermont Adult Learning, both specific to new Vermonters and ELL, but also not, because they provide a number of services beyond ELL that I think would be really valuable for a lot of the providers here, regardless of the language that the folks you work with speak. So welcome, Jackie. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Alex. Thanks for having us and bringing us together. So Vermont Adult Learning is one of 4 one of 4 adult education providers in the state of Vermont. We have 7 centers that cover 7 of Vermont's 14 counties. So our programs, what we're known for is providing adult education skills, basic education. We have a high school completion program in which students can get their diplomas through working with us and through their associated high school. We offer GED testing and tutoring for the GED credential. As we have a very robust English language learner program in which we help New Vermonters with English speaking, writing, and reading skills, job skills, and citizenship. We do have workforce development programs, and we help students transition to post-secondary education. Our services are free, and we work with anybody who is 16 and older. Our approach is highly individualized and student driven. Each student that we work with, we create a personal learning plan with. We have an online learning center, and in addition to teaching, of course, in person, we have the online learning center and hybrid learning. Yeah, we work with different organizations in the community like BDCC and World Learning and ECDC and the Multicultural Center to reach New Vermonters. That's the elevator pitch. Any questions?
Great, thank you.
Yep.
And on the other side of the mountain, as we say, the similar provider in Bennington County is the tutorial center. And I see Amanda is here. And so Amanda, if you want to just share a little bit about, and where you're both located. So Jackie, if you want to say where you're located, and then Amanda, if you could after Jackie's done.
Sure, we're right here in Brattleboro, and I'm going to drop in the chat a link for contacting us in our main telephone number. But we're right here on Putney Road in Brattleboro.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
So hi everyone, my name is Amanda Monick. I'm the transition counselor and ESL instructor over here in Bennington for the tutorial center. I'm sorry, I'm just joining, so I missed a lot of what Jackie had said, but I'm pretty sure at the tail end of it, she covered just about what we do as well. So we help folks attain their GEDs, high school completion. So we do try and get a lot of folks in to get their high school diplomas. Obviously, we work with tutoring students, and we are at adult ed, so we 16 and up. So I have been working with specifically a lot of our new Americans recently. We have ESL here in Bennington, is also in Manchester, at our Manchester facility. We have just added maybe 7 to 8 new Haitian students through the organization here in Manchester, Grace Initiative. We are working with World Learning, ECDC, a lot of the providers that I'm sure that Jackie just mentioned. So yeah, we help students, go into workforce development. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm repeating what Jackie had said, but basically a lot of what she had said is the same thing that we do. Any questions?
Great, thank you so much.
Sure.
Yeah, and so as I mentioned earlier, both the Tutorial Center and Vermont Adult Learning get funding through the Agency of Education to do this work. They are our adult literacy providers, again, regardless of the language that the person's speaking. So whether it's brushing up on your English and you are a native English speaker and it's for GED, driver's license, other things, chances are there's someone there at work, folks can help with that. I think more specific to refugees, there's a program that World Learning runs called their New Vermonter Education Program. And Tim is here, and I believe I saw Azra also, but whoever wants to start and share about that program, please do.
Alex, if you could make me a co-host or something so I can share my screen.
Yes.
Thanks. Sorry, I should have given you an earlier heads up.
No worries. Keeping me on my toes. All right, there you go.
Awesome, thank you. Let me put this in presentation mode. There we go. Okay, so thanks for the opportunity to present all of this. Whoops, sorry, I've got my subtitles on from a previous presentation I was making to some French speakers. There we go. Let's try that again. Okay. Thanks for the opportunity to present our new Vermonter education program. My colleague Azra is here. She's also working on the program with me. She is currently at the Multicultural Center in downtown Brattleboro, but I gather that there's quite a lot of activity down there. So I'll do probably the bulk of the talking, but we'll want to hand it over to Azra a couple of times during the presentation. So, but just to let you know a little bit first about who we are. Again, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Tim Rivera. I'm Senior Advisor for Innovation and Strategy at World Learning. Our colleague Herman Gomez, who's the Director of TESOL for World Learning, teaching other languages. He unfortunately could not join. He's traveling, but he is very involved in the program and works very closely with Azra on the running of the program and also the pedagogical aspects of teaching English to our new Vermonters. Azra, of course, is our new Vermonter Education Program coordinator and is really the linchpin of everything that we do. We have 3 instructors currently working with World Learning: Gloria Cristelli, Kathleen Maceda, or Kate Maceda, and Julie Dolan. Without them, of course, NVEP would be nothing. So they are really the heart and soul of our program. So we're currently providing general English courses at 3 levels, and these are all specifically tailored for new Vermonters. So we've got a sort of beginner and literacy course for those who may be pre-literate or SLIFE students. I'll explain what that term means in a bit. But then we also have a low intermediate course and a high intermediate course that's currently on offer. We currently offer 68 hours of instruction per term. And what I think is really important about what we do is Azra works very closely with each of our teachers to ensure we're taking what we call a communicative language teaching approach. And what that is, it basically recognizes that learning is an active process, and the instructors play the role really of facilitators, prompting the students to engage in a communicative practice and utilize real life application of language and cultural contexts. So the participants are really expected to engage through meaningful and sort of activities that are really centered around the individual learner's experience. And in doing that, you really kind of create a community of learners that builds relationships that, amongst the students, and that can also extend to their instructors, including outside the classroom. As we know, everyone's sort of engaging with each other in real life, outside the classroom. So it's really kind of focused on those outside the classroom experiences. But it draws upon the individual experiences of the students and the language learners, recognizing that they bring their own sort of narrative, their own knowledge, and their own skill set to the classroom outside of the language that they may be learning. So it's a holistic approach. It happens through all sorts of experiential interactions and cross-cultural experiences. Language, I guess I would describe it as saying language and culture are not really the subject of the study, but rather the mechanism of study. So considering their broader sort of skill set, competencies, their own culture, and the community culture. So that's what we really mean by the communicative language teaching approach. So in that regard, we are actively integrating cultural orientation aspects into the English courses, and helping the new Vermonters to sort of navigate everyday situations that they will be encountering. So in that regard, we're also trying to incorporate digital and financial literacy alongside that English literacy in the classroom. So since April 2022, we've had 77 individuals participating in our general English courses. I put that in the wrong spot, so now I can advance.
So I see a raised hand. Do you want questions now or at the end?
Perhaps better at the end once we've had it at the end, but yeah, definitely keep hands raised so we make sure that we get to everyone.
And if you want to put the question in the chat, we can, so you don't forget it, we can circle back at the end also.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for flagging that, Alex. When the new Vermonters are still overseas, there is an assessment of their workforce and language skills by sort of the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration by the State Department, but sometimes we find that those aren't necessarily the most helpful descriptions, to be honest. So ASRA works in close coordination with ECDC and their case managers as new arrivals come to the area, and then she conducts an assessment with each arriving new Vermonter using some existing sort of tools. So you'll see there, one of the resources that we use is called ELLI. It was formerly called the ESL library, which includes a placement test. But the way that we think about the language competencies using the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, or CEFR, which has, I think, 6 or 7 designations that run from A0, which is the sort of the least amount of skills, so pre-literacy, through C2, which is total fluency. So yeah, as I mentioned, ASRA and the teachers have been using ELLI, which has lots of different resources and sort of curricular materials available. We also been using Burlington English, including for those who may not be able to come to class quite yet, but can get online. Those resources have been very important. The other thing I want to mention is that our teachers have also been trained in trauma-informed approaches, so understanding the specific experiences that many of our new Vermonters have gone through. They do incorporate that into their teaching styles. I also want to mention the Refugee Retention Program, which we've been working on, also with the support of Tracy's office, for which we're grateful. But this is more focused on sort of vocational English to ensure that refugees can stay in the region and stay new Vermonters, if you will, through greater sort of linkage to employment. So in that regard, we are working closely with ECDC and BDCC, and we identified 3 career categories that are kind of in demand where targeted English interventions are helpful. We are in the midst of the first of those, which is in early childhood education. We're currently offering a short-term intensive in early childhood education English course for, I believe it's 12 or 13 students. ASRA will correct me if I'm wrong. But those students are currently in that intensive English course before an actual early childhood ed training that will be provided by Northern Lights. So that's currently in process, and so far I think so good, but ASRA will be able to say more, or Alex actually, as well. But we also have identified commercial driving and nursing assistance as other potential pathways that we're looking at building on as well. So yeah, so you see we've got that the ECE model going now, and Jackie and her colleagues at Vermont Adult Learning are also providing supplementary English tutoring as well once that ECE training course kicks off. But really what we're looking at is new Vermonter retention through improved employment mobility and social adjustment. So I think this so far has been a really important tool for us to all have in our toolbox, because what we've kind of discovered is that there is a gap that it has existed between where some of the new Vermonters' language skills may be and what they may require in order to enter a vocational education pathway that may lead them to a credential that would be required for them to achieve employment in a field that is commensurate with their interests, their background, their skills and expertise that they've brought with them to Vermont. So in terms of challenges and progress to date, the students are advancing, some quicker than others with their knowledge of English. Just a few examples. We have some of whom you may know, but and I'm going to be using the CEFR codes to mention someone's level of fluency. But we have Lena, who is now at B2 level, who is working with HCRS and as a mental health liaison. Fatima has moved from a beginner A1 to B2 since last April, so kind of 3 different levels, and is enrolled in the early childhood ed. We have others who have gone from basically A0 or pre-literacy to the B1 level, or even B2, and now are enrolled in the early childhood ed class. So these are folks who are moving from really basic English language learning, but through this intensive work, have really achieved different, been able to take advantage of various opportunities. So including one who has improved their English such that they're able to work. They've worked with us part-time for a period, and have now also found employment with ECDC. So people really have been making a lot of great progress with their English. But there is a term to, I think, appropriately describe who most of our students are: students with limited or interrupted formal education. And so there is an established literature out there that sort of describes how to support these types of students that we try to follow and adhere to. In terms of challenges, and there are so many challenges, there are multiple second languages in the classroom. Of course, Dari and Pashto, but now Tigrinya, Ukrainian, Arabic, and Spanish. So trying to ensure, our teachers, I think, have done an admirable job of trying to manage the various second language dynamics in the classroom. Some uncertainty among the students around assessment. It is difficult when you're trying this hard to be tested, and if you are advancing, in many cases you can advance, but other times you may not, and that assessment can sometimes feel challenging. Gender dynamics, creating a safe learning environment, or creating a learning environment where students feel most comfortable, is also certainly something that we have encountered, plus everything else that the rest of us have as providers wrestle with, which are work schedules, childcare, this sort of thing. Our students also have very dynamic and urgent linguistic needs. They may say, oh gosh, I have a medical appointment coming next week and I don't know quite how to navigate that. So what is the language or what is the vocabulary that I need to try to navigate that? So I think our teachers also try to adapt and try to address that. So in terms of financial resources, again, we have the generous funding that Tracy's office has kindly given us to do a lot of this work. We are pursuing funding also through VSAC. Unclear, I appreciated the update from Tracy, trying to think about what other sources may come down the road, but there's definitely a great deal of need, I think, amongst folks, both for those who are arriving immediately, but also certainly those who will want additional English language support for a couple of years to come. So, and just a few last things about the New Vermonter Education Program. We do have partnerships, as I mentioned, with ECDC and BDCC. Very glad that we also had Amanda be able to talk about our cooperation with the Tutorial Center in Bennington, which I think has gone really well. As I mentioned, we have both public and private funding sources, but as an organization, we have also tried to bring other organizational support to this effort. So we do have TESOL experts. I mentioned our colleague Herman earlier, but we also have experts internally around workforce skills and workforce development, curriculum development that we have also tried to bring to the table, as well as, of course, our other support teams working in finance, marketing, communications, and others. And lastly, we are also working with an SIT faculty emerita, Susan Barton, to support volunteers who are working as conversation partners and helping our students with their English even outside the classroom. That's all I'm going to say for now. I want to make sure to turn it over to Azra in case there's anything I missed. I know she was having some internet issues beforehand. Azra, are you able to jump in briefly?
Sure. Hopefully, I don't know if you can see me or hope you can hear me. I was having some internet issues, so I am on my phone, unfortunately. So thank you everyone for bearing with me. Thanks, Tim. I think you covered most of the raw development and really good information. The only piece I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on was the volunteers, who've definitely been crucial to a lot of the work that each of our organizations do. And the piece that I'm really excited about is early June, we have a literacy training workshop for new volunteers, just to help better help our students who really did start at that low, kind of A0 and A1, who have still a lot of learning curves to do, but this literacy training to help them, not just our current students, but even our future students. And so that I'm excited for that. And there's new trainings available. So we'll start with that one in June and then other ones coming forward. And a lot of the work is really great. The volunteers are doing. We have volunteers working with new mothers, really focusing around vocabulary that new mothers to navigate, and in relation to WIC and many of the other programs as well. I think that's great. And then we have a couple questions. So I don't know if you want to jump into those, or Alex, Tim, I'll hand it over to you again.
I'm going to end the sharing of my screen so that I can see those. I did not see them come in, but I also want to use this moment to just pay tribute to Azra, who has done a absolutely tremendous job working with all the students and being at the MCC. She has been the linchpin of this. So thank you, Azra, for all of that. So questions. Yes.
So actually, I'm sorry, Tim, I was going to say I didn't see the question about classes. Our classes are currently all in person. We are working on some live, online courses. We do have online supplemental support, but the majority of our classes currently are in person here at the MCC. And we do occasionally, as needed, also have them at SIT, the campus.
Yeah. And then Azra, do you also want to talk a little bit about our cooperation with TTC and how we've worked with them? And Amanda, if you want to jump in.
Sure. So yeah, I'll start, and Amanda, please feel free to add anything. So we're working directly with the Tutorial Center, who's done a fantastic job offering a variety of English language classes to the new Vermonters, which has been fantastic, and even providing their own kind of targeted training or vocabulary assistance with students who are both at CCV, through tutoring, as well as others who are pursuing either banking or EMT programs, which is really great. So the way that works is that, because this is a very close-knit partnership then with ECDC, and how new Vermonters are resettled in Bennington, and then referred to the Tutorial Center, much how we have ECDC refer the new Vermonters here, providing myself and the director, Sean Marie, relevant information to the students sometimes, with their contact information, for instance, which may be missing. So we've gone ahead and like built that so that we are able to communicate in a variety of ways with students, either it's to translated materials through WhatsApp, creating emails so that we can kind of create this depository of all the relevant information for those individual students. But the referral process, it's been months in coming, but it's there, which is great. And that they're going to assign after placement and get them into their own classes. And so I work really closely with Sean Marie, and Amanda and Nancy are fantastic instructors out in Bennington who've been doing a lot of great work with our students, meeting with them one-on-one and arranging all sorts of different schedules for them. So shout out to Amanda and the team there in Bennington as well. Tim or Amanda, if you want to add anything, please feel free.
No, I think that covered it. In terms of Azra, there's also a question here about the volunteer training. I'm guessing that will be more widely advertised with once time, date, and venue. Have time, date, and venue been?
Sure, I will. Yeah, I'm gonna get the information make sure everything's confirmed with Susan, who is leading that training, and we will definitely get that out and shared with the community. Great question.
I will also say just briefly to distinguish sort of the various roles and responsibilities between myself, Herman, and Azra. Herman and Azra really are leading the programmatic elements, on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. I'm trying to serve as World Learning's lead and at system level, so attending these meetings, attending the Working Communities Challenge meetings. So we are, if you're wondering sort of who to contact about what, Azra is sort of your best contact for day-to-day operational matters, Herman for sort of wider level programmatic matters, and then if there's anything around systems level, you can come to me. But yeah, very happy to. Oh, and I see Grace just added a new question. Since we work with our majority low English population almost exclusively with volunteers, how will the volunteer training reach Bennington?
So there is an online component to the training, which will then certainly be, shareable with anybody, any of us here down in the South. And of course, anyone from Bennington is also welcome to come out here to Brattleboro. But there is a very much an online component to the training so that we can make it available to as many people as possible.
Tracy, I see your hand went up.
Yeah, I just also wanted to follow up on the Bennington connection generally. Would you be able to describe, so if I'm a new Vermonter and I move to Bennington, I get the ELL supports from the tutorial center there, but it sounds like World Learning has other kinds of programs. As someone in Bennington, do I get equal access? How does it work? And could you describe the programs you're doing now? Are they mostly online, mostly in person? So I guess a two-part question. Generally, what's the split of online versus in person? And then specifically around Bennington, what's the difference between the offerings for Bennington versus folks in Brattleboro, and what are their opportunities? Thanks.
So pretty much all of our programming is currently being done in person. There are some online resources that we can make available, and Azra can speak a little bit more to what Burlington English and Ellie offer. And then Azra, do you want to, Azra and Amanda, if you want to speak to the sort of how you've structured the English language courses in Bennington versus Brattleboro?
Sure. I'll jump. Did Amanda? I'm already sorry. I was going to say, great question, Tracy. And I think for in essence, and I want to say that a lot of the opportunities is very similar to Brattleboro and Bennington in sense of like there are different class offerings at different levels, which is great. And there is, we do try to share some of the materials. Primarily, both of us, for instance, do use Burlington English, which is great. So that we do both have access to that, so students are able to have access to similar resources. Goodness, what's the word I'm looking for here? And that's so that the online component is not, right now, it's not asynchronous. It's not even, so excuse me, it is asynchronous, it's not synchronous yet, but in the development of having in the fall, some new actually options being offered, which would be simultaneously for Bennington and Brattleboro at the same time in an online format. So that's upcoming, that's looking ahead. Amanda, feel free if you want to add anything.
Yeah, currently here in Bennington and Manchester, we are in person only. For our high school completion ABE students, we do have an online component. So if we have higher level ESL folks, they are welcome to join online, and we can provide some conversation based or grammar, whatever they may need through that. But right now we are working with a lot of lower level individuals. So, and they're all in person. So, yeah.
Yeah, and Azra, Amanda, I don't know if this also holds true, but English has also been sort of a bare minimum sort of requirement or entry point for the digital literacy skills that people need in order to engage with online content, whether synchronously or asynchronously. So, you know, that has also been sort of a systemic obstacle in that regard to doing more online. But as Azra said, we're looking to see what we can do and offer for the fall.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more thing. Thanks, Tim, is that, you know, our focus, much like that within Bennington, has been many of the literacy learners. There is, because of the challenges sometimes we have with gender dynamics and making sure that we're providing that safe space for students. You know, we are very accepting of there are only so many of the population that we might directly be able to serve, but then are able to certainly collaborate and work with our partnerships close in the area, such as, you know, Val has offered a great number of classes for those students who may not have everything that we can offer them, but then Val is able to provide classes that really meet their needs as well. So it's great to have that partnership here in Brattleboro with Val.
Great. I see another great question from Karen in the chat. So as new folks from different communities go to different places in Southern Vermont, how, you know, yeah, so where do the plans stand with having classes in Wilmington? You know, that I think is a great general question. You know, who's responsible for ensuring ELL needs are met, and that a given community or region's capacity to meet them, you know, and I'll, you know, whether it's World Learning or Tracy's office. Yeah.
So with Wilmington, this was not originally a location we were had planned, but I know Azra was looking into supporting, at least for a short period, having a teacher offer a class in Wilmington. So she's got more recent information than I do. But
thanks, Tim. It's kind of, yeah, there's different pieces to it. Given one of our challenges is, you know, some capacity has still been limited, financial resources. So it's been a bit of some strategic planning that we've been doing, trying to get a good assessment, both of the timeline of how many students, what the needs of the students, you know, what the needs of those students are, what their goals are, and how we can then how to best support them. In the first wave, it's been at least trying to get them to the online offerings, even though they are not necessarily live classes, just being able to have access to those, and taking, of course, being mindful of what their computer skills are, which thankfully we have some strong ones, and then those who are still learning, which is, you know, it's a great mix. My hope is to get some on the ground in-person classes running there soon over the summer. I'm hoping that we can build something that's sustainable and, you know, systematic to keep it developing. But I know that working, this is where Tim and I, you know, both for his guidance and support regarding the different places and what that would look like for the whole NVAP program, the different parts, whether it's just Deerfield Valley, if there's going to be other locations as well. And so this is working in collaboration with ECDC to get a good sense of how many students, how many, you know, people, where are they going, and figuring out their needs are going to be.
I can also just piggyback here briefly, because I think you asked the question, Alex, about whose responsibility is it? So with the housing challenges we have, not just in the Brattleboro area and Bennington, but really all over the state, we're going to see more people pushed out of main centers, right? And the good thing about that is that, you know, it allows them to access housing that might be available outside of a center. The downside is it gets a lot trickier for us to be able to use economies of scale to address their other needs. And so employment services like direct employment support, ELL, and all of those things are easier to do when folks are kind of in a concentrated area. Given that, we have to, I think more creatively about what kind of service can we give to folks who are farther out. We do have additional funding this year, so it's likely we will be able to, and for folks to understand actually how it works. So when we have funding available, we put out requests for proposals. We're required to bid for the most part. Sometimes if there's money that comes in through an emergency clause, we don't have to, but World Learning was one of the bidders, and along with Tutorial Center. And so that's kind of how it works. And that's set up usually for a 3-year period. So initially when the bid went out, we probably hadn't included a broader description of, because we don't really know where folks are going to end up. Even with these other programs that are coming in now, it's kind of tricky. So we're going to have to get creative, but it's likely that very soon we will have additional funding and we may be able to amend some of the existing grants that we have for ELL across the state. And that might, hopefully then, we would probably ask with that amendment to have some thought put into how we can more equitably, ideally, address some of the language needs in places that might be outside of the centers.
I'm just sorry, just reading through the chat. Yes, so Grace brings up a great point, is that as folks are farther afield from these central locations, that the volunteer support probably needs to be even more essential than it already is, I'd say. And I think that's something that the working communities here is also putting a lot of effort into this coming year, is around supporting volunteers for all different organizations, you know, whether they're co-sponsors or volunteers with CASP or part of the efforts happening in the Upper Valley. We're planning to offer some not professional development, but support and capacity building trainings for that. You know, so that is, you know, more to come. But yes, Grace, absolutely, especially as private sponsorship models become more and more important and perhaps popular, that'll be even more important. Great. And again, you know, just another comment on the need that is now growing in the Deerfield Valley. Great. One thing I do want to say, like, no, in my mind, there's no better slide that reinforces the value of these meetings than the one Tim shared about the early childhood education training, because every single, you know, ELL provider in our region is involved in that one way or the other, to the extent that we even had folks from Bennington provide input because they've run our childcare training in the past. So literally the Tutorial Center, Vermont Adult Learning, World Learning, everyone is playing a small role in getting this one training put together from soup to nuts. And so I think that is going to be the nature of this work always, whether we're talking about learning, workforce development, or access to other services. And so again, I think, you know, it takes a village of volunteers, but also it takes a village of providers to get all of this stuff done. So I appreciate that. The last thing I'll say, you know, Joe, I'll call on you in a sec, is that if ELL is very interesting or relevant to the work you do, we do host monthly ELL working group meetings, so providers can dive a bit deeper into some of these issues. And so if you're interested in that, please feel free to just let me know. Most of those, if not all of those meetings, are posted in the same location as these videos are posted. Last but not least, Joe.
Good morning, everyone, and sorry that we got delayed in our emergency meeting and joining you. I just wanted to come back to the Deerfield Valley. As we continue to plan, I just want to, make a request that these folks have been there for a period of time now. So, and then English language classes we can provide to them, whether online or we can talk this offline for all the English providers here. But we will really want to see something taking place at the DFE Valley area because the folks have been there for a while now and they are missing out a little bit. So I just wanted to bring that point out. Is it time for me to say something now, Alex? Or
Yeah.
later on
Yeah, sure. Now would be great. Any updates, just generally from ECDC?
All right, so we don't have much today, but from our last meeting till now, we have had 21 arrivals. And we have mixed from Eritrea to Yemen and Afghanistan. All of the 21 are in the Brattleboro area. In recent time, I don't know, Tracy Tracy did mention, we are running into housing as it is in our community. So as you all know, our housing, people are temporarily housed at SIT while we take our time to bring in, look for permanent housing. We are running against that capacity currently. So we will have a pause in arrival and hopefully by August pick up again. So currently we may stop, having people arrive, except for those who have family ties, who families are already here. We will still continue to receive those. And those that we have already assured, when I say assured, meaning we have 21 people that we already accepted to come and they are in pipeline. So any of the 21s, when the arrival date comes, we will have to accept them. And then any new person that has a family here who wants to come, we will still accept them. Other than that, between now and August, any new arrivals, any new case that is given to us, we will not assure the case until after August. To the housing challenge, we are, thinking now moving out of Brattleboro. So again, it is for the discussion of the team here, start to think ahead about what other services we can provide because we're looking at other areas outside of Brattleboro because of the housing challenge we have. We know that we can't house everybody in Brattleboro, so folks will be moving to other towns around Brattleboro as well as around Bennington. And so basically, this is our one more thing. The last time when we did a community consultation, we provided our projection for FY24 and 25. And for Brattleboro, we projected for FY24 125, and FY25 we projected 175. We reduced that forecast because of the housing challenges we have. So Brattleboro from 125, we reduced that to 110. And for FY25, for 175, we reduced that figure to 120. So that's the projection we have for now. And this is the update we have for you today. If any question, feel free to send it my way. Thank you so much.
Great. Any questions, comments? Great. The last thing I'll say is I think my only other notes were there are 16 people enrolled in our early childhood education class. And so that'll be a really exciting, thing. That's the, I want to leave today what I'm most excited about around ELL. And I think it's this class, how everyone's come together, and not all 16 folks will graduate at the end of the class, which is something we've known about, but I think it also goes back to progress is the goal, regardless of where people are starting and where they end up. Like there's no such thing as failure around language learning because the goal is always progress. And so it's just an exciting time to really see that, play out in real time. So thanks to all of our ELL providers and educators who shared today, and thanks for everyone else who was able to join us. We will see you next month. Great. Thank you so much.